Keita.
Hey, Chantra, how are you
Oh,
today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Girl, I've been so excited to have this conversation with you. You are my creative friend. You are so inspired. And I so love following your presence on Instagram.
Oh, thank
Your
you.
digital presence is as beautiful as you are. And I know that you spend time curating and cultivating it. Keita Turner is an artist. She's a creative. She was formally trained at the Rhode Island School of Design. And I believe you launched your career directly in New York, correct, Keita?
Yes, I did. I actually, when we were in New York together, I don't know if you recall, I was a fashion designer at
I
the
do.
time, did almost a decade in fashion
Girl,
before
not
transitioning.
only do I recall it, but I esteemed it because I don't know if you recall, I think I shared with you how like dream job for me was doing like fashion design.
Oh,
And
wow.
my dad was like, finance degree, scholarship, that's where you're going.
I know, maybe I was like, it was my dream job too at one point, but
Yeah.
things change.
Yes, they do. But you know what? But you stayed in the same community, and I'm so excited to explore more about that. I mean, your Instagram is popping with
Oh,
so much inspiration. I know that you carefully curated. So I want to
yeah.
talk about that. I want to talk about I want to talk about art. I want to talk about
Okay.
creativity. I want to talk about lifestyle, brand, curating Instagram, and also just some of the relevant things that are about to happen in the world of art.
Okay.
Um,
Well, yeah, let's dig in. I'm looking forward to this.
awesome. So maybe let's roll her back
Okay.
and for grounding, just share everybody. When did you feel a calling to the arts? And when did you know that that was going to bring you to the Rhode Island School of Design?
Oh gosh. Well, I think as a young child, I probably had a natural calling. I recall when I was in, elementary school, I guess. I recall doing or making my own Vogue magazines and drawing them. I guess I would do them at home. And
Wow.
then, back then everything we did was on like notepad or note paper. So I would draw my little fashion models and fashion designs, and then I would staple, how you would staple the
Yes.
in the middle. I would fold it, had a few little pages to flip through, and then I would pass them around class and get in trouble. Like, I don't know. We were learning, like, how to write our name. I can't remember. And then the teacher would be like, Miss Turner, the entire class. So, my parents would get the call. So that's probably the first time, my mom would have Vogue magazines around. She would have her Architectural Digest, Essence, all of those great magazines. And I think, though, I will say this. I was born in Houston, Texas, which that school district in Houston was probably more not as diverse, or no, I shouldn't say that. It was more people of color, maybe not the best school district. Also, my parents were much younger then. And then when my dad was transferred to St. Louis for his job, they moved, instead of putting us in private school, they moved to the suburbs and chose a neighborhood that had one of the top public high schools in the country. But it
Wow.
was also a culture shock because I was one of only Black students. And then I also found out that I was behind.
Mm.
And so that, I think, and it took me a while to kind of realize that probably had a profound effect on me as a student. And even as an adult growing up, just knowing that I was behind and I had to be put in, and I won't say remedial classes, but I had to be pulled aside to catch up.
Wow.
And there, I just recall having really amazing teachers that were concerned and, loved me as a teacher would love their students. But I remember it putting this spark under me to excel and to never let that happen again.
Wow.
So to the point where I ended up probably burying, how do you say that?
Burying.
That.
But girl, this is the Proven Not Perfect podcast, so it's sort of okay for that to happen.
Thank you, good, because we know, right?
Yes.
Far from being perfect. But that, I believe, I buried that side. So I was on this path to be in the honors classes. So by the time I got to high school, I was in all honors classes, except that's when some of my, I realized that I wasn't the sharpest or the best at math, even though my dad was a mathematician.
Go figure that.
He wasn't patient. So I just, I was skipping classes, honestly. Instead of going to my dad asking for help, I would skip classes until my grades came, and my mom's looking at my dad like, wait, what's happening here? And then I got to honors chemistry, and it just didn't click the way I thought it should. The other honors classes, I was fine. But I remember going to my mom, feeling a little deflated, and just it's so funny when I think back to it. I don't know, as a high school, just grown in the aspect of thinking that this was the end of the world.
Yes.
And I just asked my mom, I just said, Mom, what am I going to do? I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go in this path, but these things I'm not excelling the way I thought I would. And that's when it was my mom who reminded me how much I enjoyed the arts.
Wow.
And then at that point, she said, if you're serious about this, you should take that path. And we even looked into another high school that was in the same school district. So I went to Parkway North, but there was another high school that was in a more affluent neighborhood, Parkway Central, that had a 0-period art program. And there was a teacher there who was phenomenal. And I went there for I am not a morning person. 2 years, I drove to a 6 a.m. class in high school. That's how serious I was. Wow. And she's the one that helped me and all the students look at the top art and design schools. So she was the one that suggested the Rhode School of Design. Never heard of it. Wasn't even the whole East Coast, even though my mom's from the Southeast. She's from Georgia, but the whole Northeast, New England area was not even really on my radar. Just even those Ivy League school, because RISD was across the street from Brown. So we shared a campus with Brown. So that, I think, changed my life. Yeah. And she was like, if she gets in there, that's where she should go.
But I tell you what, as I listen to your story, it just speaks of a couple of things. One, it's so easy for us to pursue the popular path. So here you are in this high school and you're seeing how people excel and how they do. And even though it's not your right muscle, it's so easy to pursue that popular path, right? But kudos to your mom, what I hear in that story, in her courage, where it's a whole lot easier for a mom to kind of say, yes, Keita, go down the path of being a doctor and a thing and a whatever, right? Because it brings the medals with it that sometimes we appreciate in community. Yeah. But she said, no, this child is really good at this, and let me cultivate that and even help encourage it by positioning her in a different school. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back to it, and I don't want to cry in this, but I appreciate both my parents. I mean, I think I got both sides. My mom, and when I think back to her career, I didn't even realize that my mom went to undergrad, and she went to a couple of schools because that was during segregation time. But she majored in art. Her major was fine art.
Wow.
Her minor was graphic design. So her parents, who were both educators, actually allowed my mom to pursue a painting and art degree.
Wow.
And then she went, and then she went and got her master's in that. So I think if I probably didn't have a mother that pursued that, I probably wouldn't have taken that path. And I won't say that my dad was frightened. My dad was scared because my dad, computer scientist, mathematician.
Yeah.
I think, and he would probably kill me for, I don't even know if I should put this on camera. Like, I remember wanting to go, like, I applied to all different types of schools and even some historically Black colleges. And I think my dad, because I wanted to major in art, I think he was fearful, like he was led by fear. And at the time he was like, well, no, if you're going to major in art,
yeah,
I thought I should go to the school that specialized in it.
That's right.
Keita,
that's real. I mean, I have my own story with that same thing where I tell you, I really, if I were going back to, my teenage self and thinking about degree and college and future and career, I was really drawn to a fashion merchandising program at the Louisiana State University. And, went through the process and all that stuff. But I also, obliged my dad specifically, who was more leaning towards scholarships that were coming in science and math and business. And as it boiled down at the end of the day, his wisdom and, let's face it, his fears won out. And no regrets, right? The journey has been beautiful, and I've found a way to be so artful in the spaces that I've been. However, I look back and I recognize that was a sign of the time. Now play it forward. I called you, I don't know if you remember, back when my oldest was 9 years old, and she was very clearly demonstrating that her most confident and comfortable voice was in the arts. And I believe she interviewed you for like a class assignment or something. And you poured into her at that moment, and me at the same time, because, I trust you. I was just like, go interview Keita. And you were literally dropping knowledge to her, like, no, if this is what you're interested in, see it for yourself, learn the schools where you can do it, keep going. And I know for a fact that you're one of those voices that she will forever have tucked in her heart, that if she ever questions how hard it is, she just thinks to what's in her heart. And she's like, but there's nothing else I want to do. Right.
Yeah. And it's some people, and we're all different. Like, some people know right away what they want to do. And some people, like we said earlier, follow the path that may make their lives easier, or that they think is the popular path. And then some of us know early on, some of us figure it out later. And you know what? One thing that I've learned at my young age,
drip, girl, drip.
Is that life still changes, and that we enter different phases. And what was important to us at one point, what was important to us in our 20s, in our 30s, 40s, 50s, it changes.
Yes, it does.
And I think it's okay to transition.
Yes.
I think that we have to be flexible, because even now, you just don't know. And things like life, recessions. I mean, first of all, I'm going to say first of all, from college, I graduated into a recession.
Yeah.
I had no idea, that I didn't even think of a recession. I hadn't even been thinking of economics that way.
Right. But we did. We graduated into a recession. But I think that's where you make such salient points, in that you will start off with this plan and the plan will change. Whether you allow yourself to follow passion or whether you follow what's, the traditional path, right? One thing that's true is it's going to change. And I don't know, I think if you stay centered and grounded in what drives you, then it prepares you to go through that change. Because you're right, what do you do with the recession? So you start your career then right in fashion design. I think you were working with a large brand.
Yes. I took it to work with because another thing, I wanted to go to Paris. Like my idea was to be like, at the time I was like Bill Blass or Jeffrey Bean or Claude Montana. I'm just thinking of the designers that were huge, obviously the Oscar de la Rentas and the Carolyn Herrera, like just the
amazing brands,
amazing like couture. And that's where I always saw myself becoming a name or becoming, this fabulous designer. But then my dad, again, because, I guess I was a dad girl. Plus, again, my dad being is it the right side? I guess it's the logical side.
Yeah.
Was like, you need a job with benefits.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was an IBMer.
That's
25, 30 years. So he was the stable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. That's the path I took. So I worked for the corporate fashion houses like Liz Claiborne. Like my first internship was Chouse. I worked for the Gap Incorporated when Old Navy was coming about. Wow. My last job in fashion was Federated Department Stores, who owns Bloomingdale's and Macy's, and at the time, Earl Postal. So I was a corporate fashion designer, which on one hand, there was stability, but on the other hand, they still, it was boring as heck, and it was cyclical, and it was like, I realized this is a business, but then at the same time, it's like, wow, it's not really what I thought. It's not what I went to school. Like it just wasn't creative for me. So that's when I decided to leave finally. It was to the point where honestly, I was showing up to work when I felt like it.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Really crazy to say that out loud, but my boss at the time finally was like, we sat down, she's like, Keita, you don't want to be here. And I said, actually, I don't. And they gave me a severance and I left. And then it's funny, years later, she was like, so I'm so proud. Like all of my bosses from then, they're just proud. They watch me and they're like, wow, like you did it. You went out and you followed the path that I don't know, the path or just being on my own. Like finally
you followed your heart and your calling. And that is so beautiful. So where it led you to places where now you are designing for home design, for
residential
clients.
Yes.
And with no boundaries, because I think pre-pandemic, you were in China. No, you were heading to China, or you went to China just before all of the COVID stuff happened. Do you remember that?
No, not China. It was France.
France. Okay, I knew it was somewhere.
Yes.
Because for whatever reason, I think I was maybe either going to be in New York or whatever, and you're like, oh no, I'm not going to be there because.
Yeah, we went to Maison, which is in Paris. It's like a big trade show, and then Paris Deco Off, which is the that's where it's like even like the fashion industry, but that's where the fabric houses showcase all of the new fabrics for the new season or the following season and stuff. So it was, So
how did you get into your business?
Probably brought back COVID, didn't it? Because there was also
no, you did not.
There was a strike in Paris. There was a transit strike. So I remember at one point we were like this, trying to get on the rail. And people were from everywhere. So who knows? Like, they were linking it to one person in Westchester. I said there were probably a bunch of us that brought it back.
Girl, look, I'm gonna tell you this. my last trip right before everything was to Ireland and,
Oh, wow.
and then London. Yeah, who knows? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us probably were incubating some stuff, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
But yeah,
So now you're fully on into your own business.
yes.
You're designing, but you also have really established a name for yourself in the space. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, and and I don't want to, I don't want your listeners or audience to think that, like, because earlier you spoke of my Instagram
Yes.
platform or my account and
Right.
how I present, how yes, it's very curated.
Yeah.
So, and people have to understand that. It's like, I'm not necessarily showing everything. I'm not showing
Yes.
all of the downs. I know some people that's their platform.
Yeah.
I just choose not to show all of my failures but you better
Yes.
believe that we all have failures and that's par for the course.
So
I
real.
mean, you have to it's I rather have failures than not try at all. But
Yeah.
I would be dishonest if I sat here and said that my life is easy or that
Yeah.
I haven't had challenges or do not still have challenges, you
Yeah.
know, and that I'm where I want to be.
Mm.
Yes, I do. Like you mentioned earlier about boundaries. No, I still have there are boundaries because if you can be confined or restricted by lack of capital.
Mhm.
Now I don't have all the capital in the world, and I may not have the same amount of capital as some of my peers who
Yes.
come from other communities. I mean, if you look closely at our industry, some of the designers that do the best or do that are working on homes that you only imagine, they also come from a
Mm.
lot of money. And that's something I didn't necessarily, and maybe I thank goodness, because if I had thought about that, those I'm gonna call them restrictions, but those
Constraints.
constraints,
They would
it
have been on
probably
your
would have
mind.
inhibited me. Yeah, it probably would have like impeded me from starting or deciding to become a designer.
Mhm.
I just knew, well, I have the talent and I have a point of view, and this is what I like to do, so why not?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, but I think that yeah, if you look around, I'm not saying that I won't, but there are restrictions because you may be restricted by your client. You may be restricted by their investment, or I hate to use the word budgetary means, but it could be their investment means. It could
Yeah.
be their, especially if you're working on residential, you do have to work with also their style. Even though
Mm.
you may be bringing, even though you may get clients that want you to help them push the needle,
Mhm.
but but they're living there.
Mhm.
So you still have to work within, it's different if I'm doing a show house or if I'm doing my own home, you
Mm.
know. But yeah, there are always boundaries, but that doesn't mean you don't try to push through them. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. So access then. To
Yes.
me, the question becomes, do you feel as an African American woman of color designer that you have access? Um, Outside looking in, I see you showcasing a windows at the former Barney's, right? And being esteemed. Do you feel that the access, though, is what will allow you to continue to thrive, or do you feel that it's not what you'd like it to be?
It's okay. So we're just having a real talk, and
Yes, girl.
I would have this talk with anybody of any race or color because I just like to keep it real. And I do. I actually bring this up to some of my counterparts, my white counterparts, and they're like, and when I there's like they will say, and ride the wave,
Mm,
because we all know that. I mean, I've been doing this since 2000.
yes.
So I, as a Black designer, kind of jumped into this residential design world, the interior design world, as a solopreneur early on, but not as early as some of the other designers. There were only a handful of us. And I kept my head down. I was doing the work. I didn't even really know about seeking publicity. I didn't know, oh, let me get a publicist, or even if I don't have a publicist, let me get to know these editors, of these magazines. Let me pitch a story. I didn't know what pitching a story. No, I didn't come from that world. Okay, maybe I would enter a design competition. I knew that world. I knew creating a portfolio. I've always had to create a portfolio, whether it be a fashion portfolio in women's wear, men's wear, interiors, and I have to continue to create a portfolio. But as far as like knowing the nuances of this industry and how to really work with all the players, I had no idea. Right. If I had, I probably would have been a little bit further prior to the 2008 recession, prior to the switch.
But Keita, I got to double click there.
Okay.
Because whether we are talking about fashion, whether we are talking about your father's career at IBM or my father's career at FedEx and UPS, right, in the logistics space. So whether it was any of these industries, right, that my dad was in, FedEx, UPS, logistics, your dad, yours, mine, there is this point at which we find ourselves where you begin to scratch your head and wonder, what script did everybody else have that I missed? Right? And it happens for all of us where it's like, wait a minute, okay, I got it. I'm going to seize this and ride this. However, how much further would I have been if I knew all of this when you did? Yes. Or before? I don't know about you, but I kind of just have to not even think about it. I have to just say, you know what? My faith tells me that what I needed was poured into me at every step of the journey by being, my dad taught me, an active listener, by watching things intently and moving with excellence, right?
Yes.
Girl, do you ever think about that? Like, where was the meeting I missed?
I know I do. And you know what? I was listening to this podcast the other day about regrets. I can't remember, it was the NPR podcast or Seth Godin's Akimbo. I can't remember which one, but I was like, oh, you never thought of that. And I do have regrets sometimes. And the podcast revealed that
But is that a regret though? Or is it an acknowledgement? I want to be very clear. I don't live in regret. I do not. I'm saying acknowledgement, which is very empowering and different than regret. Implies you can actually have changed something. You can't.
Well, from listening to that podcast, they said people tend to have regrets on actions that they did not take. Not necessarily because there's certain things in life that if you took action, there's certain things you can reverse or you can change. Yes. There's some things and that's what they did polls on areas where people have regrets. Okay. So yes, you and I may be different. Yeah, there are some things that I do have regrets on. And I'm okay with acknowledging that.
Okay.
But that's just the path that I had to take. Whether I was taught, like I can say I regret using part of my 401k to start my business. If I had understood compound interest a little bit more and seeking capital or small business loans out, but I didn't necessarily have either the knowledge or didn't have the right mentors in place. But that doesn't mean, but it is what it is. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it stopped me. It doesn't mean that, maybe it just means it may take me longer.
Mhm. Mhm.
That it doesn't mean I won't still arrive at the
Mhm.
same place. Do you know what I
But I'm gonna double click on that. The finance
Okay.
person in me says somebody else regrets having took out loans instead of using their 401k, right? Because
Really? Okay.
girl, because at the end of the day, your growth, you have the ability to pour into your business. You 100% own it, and no one and are indebted to no one really. And you can still take out loans if you choose to, or you can seek investors as your brand continues to take hold, right? So, I'll just give you a different seeing.
Okay, well, thank you. And I feel like that's what, as girlfriends, that's what we're here for. And that's why it's important to even talk about,
Yes.
because sometimes people keep closed what their fears are, or where they may have thought something was a misstep or something, but
But
yeah.
let's talk about access though, because I do
The
want to,
access, yes,
yeah,
yeah.
get us back there.
Okay. Yeah, so what I think that, because I said I had been doing this for a while
Mhm.
without, I realized, oh gosh, I've never been asked to be on a, you know, a rising star list, or I won't really say ones to watch, but because it's funny, like last year I was in First Dibs Design and Squad,
Yes, you
which
were.
I think is interesting, because at my age, and considering I've been around for a while, it's like, okay, so now people are discovering me. But then I realized that some of these lists, they have an age cutoff,
Mm.
which I actually have a problem with, because I said people can change careers at any time.
Yes.
Change career at age 50.
Yes.
But because I'm not 30, I can't be put on that. And I feel like those type of
Yes.
what's the word? Sometimes I lose track of my words. I think those type of
They
careers
cap us.
should be. I think they should be done away with.
I can't. Okay, this is one that we totally agree with. I think it is literally the newspaper's last hurrah on making money, because at the end of the day, they set up all of these top, top 20, top 30, top 40, 40 under 40, 50 under 50, 60 under 60. I mean, you keep going, right?
Yes.
And what does it do? It generates all the economy around the press, around the tables, around the event, around dot, 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 dot. I think it's a moneymaker. Does it mean that they literally legitimately had the ability to identify the truly most impactful 30 people under 30? Like, what? And I even, as a woman of faith, I'm offended, because I'm like, seriously, even that 30-year-old that is skinning their knee, with the known fact that they will figure it out and get up and exponentially do the thing, like, what makes them any less influential? Nothing, right? Nothing. So yeah, girl, I'm with you on that.
There's gatekeepers, and that's one thing I've realized over the years, and it's become even more pronounced with social media and just the onslaught of like more competition in all fields, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there is, in terms of access, yes, I will acknowledge that I am gaining more access over the last couple of years, few years, maybe since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only because there have been people in our industry that have been brave enough to speak up. Like it's like sometimes, especially for Black people, Black creatives, Black anybody in any industry, sometimes we don't get acknowledgement or accolades until we have to like fuss about it.
Yeah.
Like the lack of diversity. And then all of a sudden it becomes a thing.
Yes.
And then I have to say, then unfortunately, after the death and the murder of George Floyd, all of a sudden you see all of these people in our industries, all of these outlets that want to do the top Black designer list, or I get called for all kinds of things now. So I understand what's happening. I understand that it's a wave. Who knows how long it will last until they have moved on to the next group.
Yeah. Keep it real, Keita. That's
I'm
right.
keeping it real.
Yeah.
So while I am, thankful and grateful to be asked to participate in certain events or be the face of certain events, I still understand what it is. I understand that they're making an effort where they didn't before.
But you show up, and I'm going to say this about every single Black list that's generated since 2020, since the unfortunate and untimely murder of George Floyd. They are essentially putting forward these lists of folks who have been capable, right? It wasn't like they just became capable, they've been capable. And putting them forward boldly is allowing a group of people to show how amazingly talented we are. And when you say sort of ride the wave, I think the interesting thing is, if it has to stop, it won't be because naturally it's stopping, because I believe such talent has been unleashed, such untapped talent has been unleashed to demonstrate birthrights in amazing ways. It may be, though, because, okay, enough.
Yes.
And that scares me.
Or fatigue. I think it depends, and I see changes. I have a couple of, I don't want to call them gripes, because I'm really also working on trying to be more positive, which can be difficult. Like there's a part of me, especially when I was younger, I was definitely more positive, but then sometimes living life and being in New York can weigh on you.
Yeah, New York brings a whole different layer.
It brings a whole different layer, but I do. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm not perfect. Like, I have to read books on being a confident woman, or I have to read books on staying positive and staying in the positive mindset, because you can be challenged. You can get an email, you can get anything that can kind of set you off, and then you have to recenter. Okay, wait. Okay, stay focused here. Don't keep the noise out. Just remember what you're grateful for. And I think it's a muscle that has to be practiced and conditioned. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%, Keita. It is not something that is just a fact. We all have to acknowledge it's, I wrote a book about it. It's not perfect. And we can look at the window dressing, which is why I love your humility to say, my Instagram is beautiful. That does not mean every day in my life is easy street. And that's real, right? That's real. And it's what we do to remind ourselves of the beautiful wins and the successes and the path and the future opportunities. It's what we cultivate over time that works for us to get out of the funk and to get back on track, right? And I think that one of the things for me, I don't know about you, but from 2020 on, with all of the conversations growing as they did, it literally gave me the ability to almost be like, I don't have to pretend that a Black woman in the boardroom is an easy thing anymore. Like, I can actually say amen from the pews that everything they're saying plus 1, 2, and 3 on that, right? You don't have to. You can lean in and be authentic in acknowledging that. And I don't care how many people say, well, we could have been authentic and saying that before. I don't know what alternate universe they lived in, and I would love to see how far they actually got in their career. I would love to see it, because I know that the access that we achieve came at a cost before that was one-sided, meaning the assimilation and the ability to do it the way that the access stayed available, you were rewarded and you continued. The access door would shut if you did it the way that was not acceptable. The how mattered.
And it still can shut. I mean, because when I think about some of the, like, I get things in my inbox all the time, or people calling for, whether it be fluff pieces, or, and I call fluff publicity pieces, where they just want to quote, or they want you to help them with their story, which you don't get paid for. They're getting paid, but you're just doing it maybe to increase your brand, your gram, or your profile.
Yes.
Because that's one thing I've been working on. I said, okay, well, I'll do this to increase my Google, my search engine profile, because maybe it will down the road that will lend itself to my social capital, whatever that is. And then maybe I can turn that into something eventually that, will yield more money, or who knows?
Whatever, yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, I mean, but I realize in this industry too, it's sometimes you have to respond fast, because they tend, like, a lot of those, they'll come back to you if you do respond or you do participate. But then on the flip side, you have to, sometimes, okay, is this, I've done this for this X amount of years, I answer the calls, but then what is this? You have to do an inventory. Okay, what is this? Is this helping, or is this detracting from where I really need to be going? So you have to continually, and sometimes it may shut out access. So I guess where I'm trying to go with this is there is still that, in order to continue to have the access, you have to be easy to work with.
Yes.
Or they have to feel like, oh my God, I like you, you're fun.
Yes. But let's be honest though. So I'm gonna say this, because I think that it's important to acknowledge that anybody receiving access, you're gonna being liked is like a first requirement, right? I think when I think about it though, it becomes, okay, in this notion where two people are liked, what is the desire to bring a voice that's different and unique that hasn't been heard? But girl, like is you're not even getting in the door, around the door, unless you're not liked.
And if you're not liked, yes.
And I don't think that's wrong, actually, because
it's not wrong. I mean, and that could be the challenging thing too. I was talking to one of my girlfriends the other day that's also a designer, and we were kind of talking about, sometimes this interior design thing, it can be a little uncertain sometimes. And she's like, yeah, think? Because it doesn't really matter how talented you are, especially well, I don't care whether it's commercial or residential. If the client doesn't like you and you don't vibe, you're not getting that gig.
Yeah. And that's everything. It's universal.
Everything. So there is you're always concerned, ooh, is this proposal going to go through? Or, did this meeting go well? Do they vibe with me? Do we click on both ways, So yeah, there's some built-in uncertainty, and I don't know, I just pivoted to a whole nother.
Girl, you got it out. You cleansed. It's all good. I need to know about this. I believe Monday, I guess that would be what, May 1st, is the Met Gala in New York City. And yeah, that is such a wonderful event when it comes to sparking creativity and interest. And I'm always inspired by what people choose to wear based on
Yeah.
the theme and all that stuff. I mean, do you get involved in that at all? Or do
Oh
you
no, I
have an
wish.
opinion?
That's a
Yeah.
on a that's on God, I wish I was, invited to that event because yes, I would, I love fashion. I'm glad I'm not designing it right now, but of course I would show up and like,
Do
what are we gonna wear that's going to like create a
yes.
buzz?
So how do you get invited to that? Like what is
I actually
I
have
don't
no
even know.
idea. If
I
I
don't
knew, I would be on that
you
list.
do.
No, I mean, I think it's again a lot of it's politics because if
Okay.
you notice like who their chairs may be from one year to the next, like so I think last year I want to say the chairs they were younger, they were like who's the poet, the young poet that spoke at the was it Biden's inauguration?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
it was one of the chairs. So some of it is like who's hot, who's on. Again, we talk about that profile, who's being talked about, who's connecting with the political climate of the time, social climate.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure people who have publicists,
Amanda. Her name is Amanda.
yes, people who have publicists, they work it, they work it. Yeah. So the funny thing is too, I noticed in the industry, like even with these groups like Black Girls Rock and whatever, like you'll see certain industries that get acknowledged. It's funny, I don't, our industry, interior design, we have our own organizations that pass out awards and accolades. So whether it's the Interior Design Magazine's Hall of Fame, or Kips Bay has their award dinners, or the DFA, which is the design furnishings. So there's different associations that have awards, but they're not necessarily on that national platform like the Academy Awards or the Golden Globes, which I'm sure also in your industry. So you don't really see interior design. I mean, you have some very famous interior designers, but it's not on the same scale. I wouldn't say that we're in the realm where our names would be a household name.
Got it.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, until they are.
Until
Until they are.
Yeah.
Until they are. Because I think
yes.
Yeah, because like anything else, right? There's that tipping point that you don't know, but
That's
you
true.
just kind of keep putting it out there. Yeah. So we both got an assignment to figure out, like, how do you get invited? How do you get down with the Met Gala?
Maybe it's as simple as asking. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like asking the right people, like, how do I get down?
Yes, girl, look, let's
Or
ask.
maybe it's just as simple as manifesting it.
Well, there's that.
Sometimes you never know. Like even with, I think I was telling you recently for the Barney's window, which was a fluke in a way, because that event was always supposed to be at the Park Avenue Armory, but because of the other wave, the wave of COVID that happened in January, they had to postpone it to the spring. And when they postponed the dates, the 10 days that they needed at the Armory were not available. So they had to scramble for another venue. Barney's, obviously, unfortunately, closed in 2020, and it was available. So the executive director reached out to all of the chairs, and the co-chairs was like, would you guys like to do a window?
Wow.
So the funny thing, of course, we're like, sure, okay, But the funny thing is, it was always now this is not exactly what I manifested, but I always wanted to do a fashion boutique or a store or something on Madison Avenue.
Wow.
So it's not exactly, but
oh, girl, stop taking away from it. It's so amazing.
It is, right? And so you just never know. Sometimes you have to just throw it out there and manifest, what you want. And sometimes it's so funny. I was thinking back to high school, and it's so funny because Danielle and I went to the same high school. Danielle Price, our friend Danielle Price, and we went to our reunion a few years back, and they had, at the reunion, they had our, I guess every senior, you would say or write a affirmation or a quote of where you saw yourself.
Yeah.
In 10 years. And mine, I'm a 16-year-old or 17-year-old. And I was like, I see myself as a designer living and working in New York City and owning a condo.
Wow.
And I was like, the funny thing is like, oh, I should have dreamed bigger. But the crazy thing is, I put it out there. I put it to pen. I wrote about it. I said it, and it happened.
Wow.
So, and it has happened to me. I have manifested things, whether it be a project in Florida. I do have a project in Florida now, whether it be, I wanted to work on a craftsman bungalow home. Didn't think I would be able to because I didn't think they existed in New York City. One of my clients bought a home. I showed up outside there. I was like, what? Oh my goodness. So sometimes you have to, so I was like, okay, I just need to do that more.
So what does optimism mean? That's one of the words that I write about in Proven Not Perfect. To you, what does optimism mean to you?
Optimism to me means never giving up and never letting, even if Satan tries to rear its head, because Satan does exist, but God exists too, and God is greater and better. But to me, it's to never forget that the dance, the song is not over. You know, until we want it to be, or until, you know, it's time, but to keep striving and to keep persevering. What's inspiration? Oh goodness. Inspiration is, I don't know, love. Inspiration is exploration. It's exploration to me. It's finding beauty and joy in places either that you've never been, or revisiting positive places that sparked joy, I guess. I don't know, I just finding, it's like inspiration for me is getting out of in front of the computer and going out and say, okay, I want to go to a museum today. Or, you know, I've never been to the Bronx Zoo. I've never been to the botanical, like,
oh, it's new things. It's new things.
Or things that I said that I had planned to do all these years, never done them because I've been caught up in the rat race. And you know what? I'm going to do them now. I love it. Keita, that's awesome. I mean, seriously, inspiration, you know, we can find it from so many places. And I think that maybe that's your left brain that finds it externally, right? And I'm sure that you bring it in and do amazing things in your lab. This has been a fun talk, girl. We have gone all over, and it's probably all over. We're probably it's all over. It's good, but I'm going to tell you this though. One big takeaway is the world that we live in has such beauty, and then it has flaw. It does. And even when you live in a space that cultivates and creates and is in place to create this beauty, there's still flaw. And for me, that is a wonderfully balanced perspective to end this conversation on, because there is no perfect place, but there is a place where we can be proven to do great things. And that's what you're doing. And I'm so proud of you. I agree. Oh, thank you. And I'm so proud of you too. And thank you for doing this and bringing, and I wish you all the success. I know it's going to be super successful for you. And I just look forward to hearing all your other conversations. Thank you, Keita. Thank you, Chantra.